Higgins, who finished the game with 15 and 10, said after missing several jumpers against New Jersey in the previous game, he was going to take as many shots as needed to get his confidence back. As he knew, getting pulled from the game was less likely due to their injury problems.
That's great. So he was pretty much just going to say, I'm going to jack up whatever shots I want to try and get my confidence back. Who cares if I miss, because you can't replace me with anybody else because they're out injured.
They aren't taking me out.
Oh, that's great.
I always like to say that Michael got to play with me for a year at North Carolina. I think it really helped him.
Spectacular player from the beginning.
You can see right away Jordan was going to be a big-time scorer.
And showed what an impact he was going to have on the league.
This is NB85, celebrating the 30-year anniversary of Michael Jordan's rookie season in the NBA. And now, your hosts, Adam Ryan and Aaron Steen.
Welcome back to episode 16 of NB85. How are you, Aaron?
It's a dreary old day here in downtown Upwey, but it's all sunshine and lollipops here in the other study at my house as we're about to record NB85-16.
Well said, mate. Let's get straight into the episode.
NBA News, Notes and Quotes, January 9th through 23rd, 1985.
On January the 9th, the Chicago Bulls travelled to Boston Garden and lost 111 to 108 in front of a crowd of 14,890. And the Bulls' record dropped to 17 and 18 on the season. Jordan had another fantastic game. Surprise, surprise. 36 points, 6 rebounds and 6 assists. Dave Corzine had 9 rebounds, and we've already mentioned Dave inside the first 45 seconds. That's great. And Wes Matthews had 10 points and 6 assists. And for Boston, Larry Bird had 28 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists and 3 blocks, if you don't mind. The Chief had 12 points and 10 boards, and Kevin McHale had 24 points, 6 rebounds and 4 assists of his own.
Robert, the Chief Parrish.
That's right. I couldn't believe it when I said that in the previous episode.
The article on the day of this game said that the Bulls shouldn't be surprised to see a reception committee at Logan International Airport as they arrive into Boston. The Celtics would have had revenge on their minds after the Bulls embarrassed the champs 125 to 105 on December the 22nd. After that loss, Larry Bird had told reporters, "We won't forget this. Wait until next time."
You gotta love the fact that Larry is getting a little bit pumped up there and all ready to take on the Bulls again.
The article also detailed the to and fro in the newspapers around the Celtics and Bulls matchups thus far this season. Well-renowned trash talker ML Carr called the Bulls little children who need to be spanked and put back in their place after their first matchup of the season, when Orlando Woolridge made some cocky remarks before that game.
That actually reminds me of the previous episode where we broke down one of the Bulls 76ers games.
Yep.
And Doug Collins was talking about spanking kids as well. So a bit of a strange theme that's going throughout this series, unfortunately.
Troubling. Even in the article covering this game, it was stated that the Celtics had been calling the Bulls the world champion Bulls. Bob Sakamoto went on to say they almost looked like it in this game, only losing by 3 and giving the Celtics all they could handle. Orlando Woolridge took it to Larry Bird, who was forced to guard him after his usual defender, Cornbread Maxwell, was sitting on the bench. Rod Higgins had a 3-point attempt with 3 seconds to go, but missed it. He said that he felt Danny Ainge had fouled him on the play, though back then you were only awarded 2 free throws, even on a 3-pointer, so I guess it was kind of pointless, even if he was.
Yeah, and I like how you've also replaced Cedric with Cornbread, so it's straight up Cornbread Maxwell.
Straight up Cornbread. Kevin Lockery went in with a game plan to slow the tempo and not allow Boston to run them off the parquet. Kevin McHale was key for the Celts down the stretch as he scored 12 of Boston's last 17 points in the win. Several Celtics, including Bird, McHale, and coach Casey Jones, were all complimentary of both Jordan and the young Bulls after this game.
Now, also on this same day, the Denver Nuggets were 100-91 victors against the New York Knicks. It was the Knicks' 10th straight road loss. Pretty ordinary. And Alex English for the Denver Nuggets had 29 points, 12 of which came in the fourth quarter of this game. On January the 10th, Magic Johnson returned to the LA Lakers after missing 2 games with a sprained finger. He had 20 points and 10 assists in the Lakers' 120-112 win versus Utah. Now, some strange happenings towards the end of this game. Mark Eaton for Utah, who was a guest in episode 49 of the In All Annals podcast, had 15 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 blocks for the Jazz. And with 2.5 minutes left, Utah's coach, Frank Layden, apparently walked across the court and congratulated coach Pat Riley and the Lakers, who were seated on the bench. He then proceeded to walk off the court and back to the Jazz locker room. It was Utah's 14th loss in 18 road games. I've got no idea why Frank left the game early, but he did. On the same day, Lenny Wilkens coached his 1,000th game, leading the Seattle Supersonics to an 89-86 victory at Golden State. His record to that point was 538 and 462. January the 11th, the Chicago Bulls took on the New York Knicks and won the game 113-97 at Chicago Stadium in front of 11,556 people. The Bulls' record went back to 500 at 18-18. And for the Bulls, Jordan had 23 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 dimes. Quentin Daly had 22 points. David Greenwood had 8 boards, and Jawan Oldham had 5 blocks. Good stuff there from Jawan. Now for the Knicks, Darryl the Pedestrian Walker had 16 points. Bernard King was kept to just 9 points on 4 of 6 shooting in only 6 minutes of play due to injury.
So you might say that Bernard King was downgraded to Prince for this game.
That's right.
There was a nice article on the day of the game on Bernard King and his quest to become the perfect basketball player. It went into the amount of work that he spent honing his craft and even doing things like practicing to shoot against double teams, which is the first time I've ever heard a player doing that. Bill Cartwright's absence had left him getting double and triple team more this season, and Bernard specifically practiced 1-on-2 to score against this kind of D successfully. It also spoke of his articulate, sensitive side and his popularity among the general people. In a recent LA Herald Examiner poll, he ranked only behind President Ronald Reagan and the Commissioner of Major League Baseball as their Man of the Year.
Wow, that's a good little stat there, mate.
Kevin Lockery said that, "I've coached Bernard before. He only scored 15 against Denver last night, and he had the look on his face tonight. I told my assistant coach, Fred Carter, watch Bernard. He could have 50 or 60 tonight." He was well on his way as King scored 9 points in the first 6 minutes of the game before spraining his ankle, and then he didn't return, letting the Bulls off the hook to blow out the Knicks.
Yeah, I think King only played 55 games in this season, so was beset with injuries. And unfortunately, later in the season, and we'll get to this in a future NB85 episode, his career was forever changed.
I'd be horrified if I ever found out that Bernard didn't miss games because of some kind of a finger injury, considering all of the tape that he had riddled across his fingers. So,
flashbacks to the 84 playoff series there against the Pistons, mate. It took me a little while to pick up on what you're saying, but agree wholeheartedly.
The Bulls broke the game open in the second, outscoring the Knicks 32-14, including 11 by Jordan in the term, as the Knicks went 5 for 20 from the field compared to Chicago's 9 for 14 in the quarter. It was one of the first times that the Bulls had gotten a lead and turned a game into a blowout this season. Bernard went home to New York City for scans on his ankle after the game, as the rest of his team travelled on to Indiana to play the Pacers. Several Bulls players spoke about the confidence that they had gotten from pushing the world champion Celtics to 3 points in Boston in the previous game.
And speaking of Boston, on January 11, Larry Bird had 33 points, simultaneously surpassing the 10,000-point plateau, as Boston were 103-101 winners against the Washington Bullets. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar made 12 of his first 13 shots, including a staggering 9 skyhooks in the Lakers' 121-102 victory at Dallas. And it was the 11th win in the last 12 games for the Lake Show. And also on this date, Houston at Philadelphia. It was Hakeem Olajuwon versus Moses Malone in their first pro meeting. Now, the reason I even bring this up is because during the off-season, before this season commenced, that's why it's called the off-season, they worked out together on numerous occasions in Houston, and the 76ers would win their 10th game in a row. It was 115-108, tying Boston for the then longest winning streak of the season to that point. And Hakeem had 16 points and 8 boards, and Moses had 28 points and 10 rebounds of his own.
Even though they had worked out quite a bit during the offseason with 28 and 10, it appears as though Hakeem hadn't quite worked Moses out.
Good numbers there from Olajuwon, but of course he was schooled by the veteran Moses Malone. Now, January the 12th, the Bulls took on the Cleveland Cavaliers at Richfield Coliseum in Ohio in front of 18,074 people, and the Bulls dropped another game. It was 101-98. They went down again another 3-point margin, dropping them back to below 500, 18-19, their record at that stage. MJ had 24 points, 12 rebounds. That's a phenomenal effort there. There's my first phenomenal mention of the episode. And 3 assists. And Orlando Woolridge had 21 points and 6 rebounds, along with 5 assists. For Cleveland, Will Be Free had 32 points. Phil Hubbard had 19 points and 9 rebounds. Mel Turpin had 15 points and 13 rebounds. Very strong double-double there. And Roy Hinson, a name we haven't mentioned all that much in this series to date, but had some great games throughout this season. He had 10 points and 10 rebounds for the Cavaliers.
Roy Hinson, probably best known for that trade between the Cavaliers and the 76ers that netted the Cavs the first overall draft pick and Brad Doherty, Adam.
Couldn't have said it any better.
Kevin Locklear said in the article that accompanied this game, "I've screamed and yelled more at this team than any I've ever coached." After the loss to the team with the worst record in the NBA. The article said MJ enhanced his reputation of nearing superstar status in this game. He didn't score 50 because those were coming down the track in spades against Cleveland. But he did lure 18,074 into Richfield, a basketball wasteland for the Cavs' biggest crowd in 4 years. The Cavs even asked the Bulls vice president, Jonathan Culver, to return his 4 complimentary passes so they could sell them.
That is so good. That's one of the great little factoids there. Clearly, the Cavaliers were in money mode and they were trying to get the advantage of any possible extra ticket sales. So, funny stuff.
It appears it was a one-man show in this game as old mother Phil Hubbard hit 2 key foul shots with 11 seconds left.
That's why I was giggling before when I said his name. I should never have even mentioned old mother Hubbard in the previous episode, but now, unfortunately, it's stuck.
It was going to happen anyway. The Bulls trailed 98-90 late in the game and then put on a run, forcing the Cavs into 3 straight turnovers in the final minute alone. MJ had a 3-pointer that missed. They would have sent the game into overtime. Cleveland smashed the Bulls on the boards 59-39, including an extraordinary 26 offensive rebounds, one of which led to the late Phil Hubbard free throws to seal this game.
On the 13th, the Detroit Pistons blew out the LA Lakers by 23 points. It was 121-98 in Detroit. Isaiah went for a lazy 30 points and 20 assists. In another game on the same day, the Milwaukee Bucks thumped Denver by 24 points, 140-116. Don Nelson registered his 400th win as a coach, and he became the 16th in NBA history to do so. For Milwaukee, Sid the Squid Moncrief, Craig Hodges and Paul Pressey scored 21 points apiece. New Jersey Nets' Otis Birdsong hit a 20-foot fadeaway jumper from the baseline with 3 seconds remaining to steer the Nets to a 100-99 victory versus the Houston Rockets. And in another game on the same day, Dallas sharpshooter Dale Ellis had 27 points, including 6 threes, which was a then team record, in the Mavs' 124-101 victory versus Portland. The then all-time record for made three-pointers in a game was shared by Hall of Fame legend Rick Barry, former podcast guest in episode 46. Thanks very much for coming. And John Roche with 8. So these days we're looking at double digits for made threes as a record, but back in the mid-80s, having made 8 in a game would get you for equal high in that terms of that record.
If you hadn't have seen who he played for when finding out that stat about threes, would you have been able to tell me who John Roche played for?
No way.
On the 14th of January, the Chicago Tribune had a article entitled "Bulls are up front when discussing main problem." The article spoke of the Bulls' woes up front with their underachieving big men, and the Tree Rollins trade possibility that passed them by earlier in the season. The Bulls claimed that in the trade, Atlanta wanted David Greenwood, Dave Corzine, and a first-round draft choice, otherwise known as too much.
Have you added otherwise too much?
I shortened it for my own use.
January 14, the Bulls took on the Denver Nuggets at Chicago and won the game 122-113 in front of a bumper 8,922 fans. The Bulls went back to their 500 record at 19-19. MJ had a ridiculous game. It was his first career triple-double. He had 35 points, 14 rebounds, and 15 assists. Steve Johnson had 22 points and 9 rebounds, so a great game from him. Dave Corzine, the aforementioned Dave Corzine, had 20 points, 5 rebounds and 5 assists, so a really great game there from Dave. And for Denver, the usual suspects, Alex English had 25 points and 4 rebounds. Fat Lever had 13 points, 7 assists and 4 steals. And the Jordan stopper of the mid-80s, T.R. Dunn, had 8 points. I mentioned T.R. Dunn because in the lead-up to this game, he was described as a defensive specialist, shutting down MJ in their previous meeting. And I believe he finished up in the top 10, T.R. Dunn that is, in the Defensive Player of the Year awards, for what it's worth.
If he was the A4 mentioned, that would make him slightly smaller than the A3 mentioned. Bob Sakamoto wrote in the Chicago Tribune that it was simply Michael Jordan at his finest. Aaron Steen wrote, if nothing else, the Bulls of 1985 were consistently inconsistent after dropping a games to the league's worst team, only to follow up with a win over the Midwest Division leading Denver Nuggets.
Oh, mate, you want to roll?
I guess Dave Greenwood would now have been able to officially be impressed with MJ as he had his first triple-double of his career in this game. MJ said he focused on setting his teammates up in the first half and finished with 9 points, 8 rebounds and 7 assists as the Bulls led 54-48 at the half. His teammates all contributed well with Steve Johnson's 22, Dave Corzine's 20 and 12 each from Higgins and Matthews. Then when the Nuggets cracked down on his teammates, MJ took over with 15 points in the fourth quarter. Orlando Woolridge sat out this game with a pulled groin muscle.
That doesn't sound too good.
Every time the Nuggets drew close in this one, the Bulls pulled away. The article said the victory was especially sweet for Dave Corzine, who usually hears jeers and boos from the Bulls faithful. It was nice, said Dave of the cheers that he doesn't usually hear. It was nicely set up for layups and dunks by MJ in the first half. With Caldwell Jones still out with the injured finger, on this day the Bulls signed 7-foot, 250-pound Chris Engler to a 10-day contract.
Apparently Engler was a good angler as far as fishing goes. Now, January 15th, no idea why I even said that. January 15th, the Milwaukee Bucks were 115-105 winners against the LA Lakers. Terry Cummings led Milwaukee with 39 points. And he had 27 in the second half. Magic Johnson had 32 points and 9 assists. Now, take a listen to this one, mate. Dallas humiliated Golden State Warriors 149-104 at Golden State. For Dallas, Mark Aguirre had 25 points and Rolando Blackman had 23, as 7 Mavs scored in double figures. Purvis Short of the Golden State Warriors was a lone hand with 33 points. It was the Warriors' 8th straight loss, and it was their worst home loss, 45 points, in its 22-year history.
Another one of those games from this season where a team's scored 149 points, but the high man has only had 25. Incredible scoring spread.
Well-balanced scoring load, definitely. Also on the same day, Jim Paxson of the Portland Trailblazers exploded for 40 points in a 121-117 win at home against the Houston Rockets. Let's move on to January 16, where the Bulls travelled to New Jersey to Brendan Byrne Arena at the Meadowlands in front of 12,787 people and lost a 100-94 decision against the New Jersey Nets. The Bulls again dropped below 500. Sound like a broken record here. 19-20.
I've got to say that there was quite a bit of criticism in newspapers about the Bulls' inability to break away from the other 500 mark, of course, on the other positive side. But the previous season, they'd gone 27-55, so hypothetically, if they were to finish at the 500 mark, that's still a 14-game improvement over the previous season, which is a more than decent improvement.
You can't argue with that logic, mate. Now, for the Bulls, MJ had 27 points, 7 rebounds and 7 assists. Dave Corzine, 15 points. Wes Matthews chimed in with 14 of his own. Steve Johnson continued his good play with 13 points, and Rod Higgins had 11. For New Jersey, Otis Birdsong had 20 points. Buck Williams had a great game with 18 points and 13 boards. And Michael Ray Richardson had 17 points and 9 assists.
Chicago Bulls saviour David Greenwood was sidelined with tendinitis for this game, along with Orlando and Caldwell Jones, who also both missed. Not that they would have gotten any great sympathy from Stan Olbach and his injury-riddled New Jersey Nets team.
The very following season is when Olbach would replace Kevin Lockery.
For a grand total of 1 season. The Bulls hung tough throughout, but missed layups from Higgins and Johnson, and a questionable charging call on MJ triggered the Bulls' downfall in this game. The Nets had a 7-2 run to finish the game as the Bulls again faltered down the stretch. Chocolate Thunder Daryl Dawkins made his return to play after 43 days in hospital with back problems by getting into a tangle with Dave Corzine, which drew him a technical foul. Corzine also upset Michael Ray Richardson on a hard pick, who then stood up to Dave, only to have Corzine shrug his shoulders at him.
Thug life from Dave Corzine.
Cold as ice.
Oh, love it. And happy birthday to Daryl Dawkins. As we record this, yesterday was his birthday, for what it's worth. I'm not sure if that'll even make it in the podcast or not, but I wanted to say it regardless. Now, move on, mate.
In an article attached to the game breakdown, principal owner of the Bulls, Lester Crown, was reported to be preparing an offer to buy out 4 of the team's minority owners. Crown, at this point, owned 32.5% of the Chicago Bulls.
So he was the main owner of the Bulls and also a school principal. Busy guy.
You idiot.
Yeah, okay, let's move on. On January the 16th, in another classic Lakers versus Celtics matchup, Kevin McHale hit a turnaround bank shot with 1 second left to lead Boston to a 104-102 win at Boston Garden. It was the first meeting since Boston's Game 7 win in the 84 NBA Finals. It was Boston's 7th straight victory and LA's 3rd straight loss. On the 17th of January, Chicago took on the Cleveland Cavaliers, this time back home, yes, at Chicago Stadium. And there was another great crowd here in Chicago, 7,199. Thought that may have been missing a digit at the front before the 7. However, not to be. The Bulls went to 20-20 on the season and were 5-point winners, 98-93. Now for the Bullies, MJ had 25 points, 4 rebounds and 6 rebounds. Yeah, he's done well. He had 10 rebounds.
That's 10 rebounds.
I can't count. 10 rebounds. I guess he had 4 rebounds and 6 assists. Poor play there from Adam. Now, Billy Corzine. I've lost the plot now. Dave Corzine had 22 points and 12 rebounds. So another great effort there from Dave.
He may or may not have had 22 points and 12 assists. We're not entirely sure.
That's right. At this stage forward, any statistic I reel off could be completely wrong.
Rod Higgins had 15 turnovers and 10 block shots.
And Joe Smith for the Warriors had... Oh, hang on. He wasn't even in this game. Higgins had 15 points, 10 rebounds and 5 assists. So that's one of his best games of the season. Wes Matthews had 6 points, 9 assists and 4 steals. And for Cleveland, Roy Hinson was the leading scorer with 19. Paul Thompson, a name I don't recall ever hearing before as far as NBA players go, had 14 points. And Old Mother Hubbard had 13 points.
That's a classic. That is a classic. The Tribune wrote that life was starting to smile on Rod Higgins and Dave Corzine, who were given golden opportunities with the injuries that the Bulls had sustained. They aren't exactly the Gold Dust Twins or Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but they were effective. Of course, my first point of call was to see who the Gold Dust Twins were. After a little bit of research, Goldie and Dusty were the Gold Dust Twins who represented Fairbanks Gold Dust washing powder as far back as 1892, but were then phased out by the mid-1950s as national sensibilities rightfully began to change. We will include a picture of the incredibly inappropriate Gold Dust twin package in this episode's blog post. Quite extraordinary.
I won't say anything further than, yes, it'll be in the show notes, and it's quite disturbing to say the least, even for something which only was 30 years ago.
It's extraordinary. Jordan, who finished with 25, was helped ably by clutch free throw shooting down the stretch by Higgins and Corzine. Higgins, who finished the game with 15 and 10, said after missing several jumpers against New Jersey in the previous game, he was going to take as many shots as needed to get his confidence back. As he knew, getting pulled from the game was less likely due to the injury problems.
That's great. So he was pretty much just going to say, I'm going to jack up whatever shots I want to try and get my confidence back. Who cares if I miss, because you can't replace me with anybody else because they're out injured.
They aren't taking me out.
Oh, that's great.
Dave Corzine said he has more confidence in his game after 3 straight strong performances, but remained cautious about spouting off about it as the mental scars from the Boo Birds were clearly still fresh. He also said he's looking forward to Caldwell Jones returning as, and I quote, "It's a lot of minutes to play," end quote, without him.
Oh, Dave. Gotta love him. Now, on January the 19th, Chicago travelled to Indiana at Market Square Arena in front of 11,303 fans, and they lost the game at 110 to 107. Again, dipped under 500 at 20 and 21 on the season. MJ had an absolute blinder, 38 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists and 2 blocks. Orlando Woolridge dropped 28 of his own, and there was no other Chicago Bulls in double figures, which was quite amazing. Although, given my run with the stats today, there could have been 4 or 5 others. Indiana, Herb Williams had 24 points and 12 rebounds, so a very strong game there from Herb. He's probably the head of my all-condiment team, Herb Williams. Clark Kellogg had 12 points and 8 rebounds. Steve Stepanovich went for 12 and 15 boards. And Terrence, the Statue of Liberty Stansbury, had 8 points.
I'd like to know how many assists Clark Kellogg had in this game, because they clearly would have been a tasty dish.
He was a serial offender in the assist category. Oh, dear. Anyhow, Quentin Daly missed the team flight to Indianapolis and was fined.
The Pacers had just come off a big home win against the Boston Celtics, and Herb Williams scored 10 of his 24 in the fourth quarter to hold off MJ and his 38-point, 12-rebound night out in Indianapolis. Orlando Woolridge returned in style with 28 points in only 29 minutes for Chicago. The Bulls went into the half up 53 to 52 on the back of Jordan scoring 13 of the Bulls' last 15 points in the second quarter. The other 2 that he didn't score himself was a dish from MJ off to Steve Johnson for a layup. MJ closed the first half with 23 points on 10 for 15 shooting, but the Bulls were again out-rebounded 28 to 20 in the first half. A 20 to 8 run in the third term broke it open for the Indiana Pacers.
On January the 20th, Boston snapped Philadelphia's 13-game win streak in a 113 to 97 home victory. It was the only game on the NBA schedule that day. Larry Bird dropped 38 points, including 16 in the final 8 minutes and 13 seconds. Moses Malone led Philadelphia with 20 points and 11 rebounds. Charles Barkley had 16 points and 12 rebounds, and Dr. J had 17 and 7 boards.
The following day, the 21st of January, the Chicago Tribune spoke of the Bulls' inability to win 2 consecutive games. They had won their last 4 home games up to this point, and now had 4 straight games at the stadium versus sub-500 teams. The 2 factors that were to help Chicago in a potential run of wins were the return of Woolridge and the improved play by Dave Corzine. The Bulls went on to win all 4 of these home games, matching their best win streak of the season at 4.
Look forward to covering those in a future episode of the show, mate. Also on the 21st, Herb Williams of Indiana had 33 points, which was his equal season high in the Pacers' 129 to 127 2-overtime victory against Golden State. Purvis Short continued his torrid form for the Warriors with 38 points. Eric Sleepy Floyd had 23 points. Now, this same day, the Kansas City Kings announced they had petitioned the NBA for permission to move to Sacramento in time for the 85-86 season. They cited poor attendances at Kemper Arena and, I quote, generally weak support over the years as primary reasons for the move. Their new home would become Arco Arena beginning the next season.
It would have been absolutely magnificent if Purvis Shorts had played for the New York Knickerbockers.
Oh, yeah. That's great. Now, on the 22nd of January, the Bulls took on the Portland Trailblazers at Chicago Stadium in front of a great crowd of 6,321. The Bulls won the game 123-115 and returned to the 500 mark, 21-21. For the Bulls, MJ went for 29 points, 12 rebounds and 5 assists. Orlando Woolridge had a great game, 29 points and 6 rebounds. Ennis Watley went for 9 points and 10 assists. And for Portland, Michael Thompson was the leading scorer with 25 points. Clyde Drexler had 23 points and 5 rebounds. Sam Bowie went for 16 and 10. And Darnell Valentine had a really good game, 16 points and 15 assists. And Kiki Vandeweghe chimed in with 18 points and 5 rebounds of his own.
It was on the day of this game that the Tribune reported that Jerry Reinsdorf was negotiating to buy the Bulls.
Yeah, that's a good little piece of information there, mate.
To mix it up, aside from MJ's 29 and Orlando's 28 off the bench, including 12 in the last quarter, Rod Higgins, who started this game, Sidney Green and Jawan Oldham were the players responsible for the Bulls' fifth straight home win. The Bulls pulled away in the fourth, keyed by Higgins, Woolridge and Jordan. The Bulls got 45 points from their bench, which was undoubtedly helped by Woolridge and his 28. In the accompanying article, Dave Greenwood appeared to have a bit of a whine about Coach Kevin Lockery and his coaching methods towards him. And I quote, in reference to Kevin Lockery's yelling, "It's been getting to me for the last year and a half. The more he yells, the more pressure I put on myself. I make a mistake, and it's a great big deal to Kevin Lockery," end quote.
It's not sounding like there's much chemistry going on there.
No, he was very upset with him, apparently.
Not sure why Greenwood's having wine during the games either. Anyhow, on January the 23rd, the Eastern Conference All-Stars were announced. The East would have an all-Chicago starting backcourt. Isaiah Thomas, who attended St. Joseph High School in Westchester, and the Bulls' own rookie sensation Michael Jordan would be the starting backcourt. They would join Moses Malone and Dr. J of the 76ers and Larry Legend of the Celtics as the All-Star starters at the 85 Classic. MJ would be the first rookie to start an All-Star game since Isaiah Thomas in 1982.
According to your notes, Isaiah and Michael were going to be joining Moses, Julius Erving, or the entire 76ers lineup.
I didn't say that, but I read it and I omitted it and corrected myself as I went along, mate. So thanks for pointing that out.
Steered around that tree very well.
That's what happens when you're Rollins in the deep. Now, last thing I want to mention, mate, about this span of time, January 23rd, Seattle invaded Boston Garden to defeat the Celtics 107-97, led by the, and I quote, Ivory Towers.
Who used that? Is that yours?
No, this is
That's fantastic.
This is fantastic, all right? This is from an article that I read in one of the newspapers, and the Ivory Towers refer to Jack Sikma and Tom Chambers. I had to make mention of this game because I could not get past the fact that I'd never heard of that nickname, the Ivory Towers. Had you?
No.
Crazy stuff. What a great nickname. You heard of the Twin Towers from, Rob Sampson and Hakeem Olajuwon and many other great nicknames going around the league, but the Ivory Towers back in the mid-'80s, that's fantastic. So we'll try and drop that whenever we can. Jack Sikma had a season high of 34 points to go along with his 16 rebounds, whilst the other member of the Ivory Towers, Tom Chambers, dropped 24 points of his own. For Boston, Larry Bird had 30 points.
For this time period, the players of the week of January 13, player of the week was Well B. Free, averaged 25.3 points per game, as amazingly the hapless Cavs went 3-1 that week.
Yes.
The week of January 20, player of the week was the one and only Michael Jordan of the Chicago Bulls, 31.3 points on 52.5% field goal shooting, and also registered his first career triple-double during this week.
Great effort there from MJ, and he led the Bulls in rebounding, I think, in 4 of their 8, or maybe 5 of their 8 games throughout this span as well. So what a great effort from him. Now, in terms of the individual highs for this period of time, Adrian Dantley of the Utah Jazz had 42 points in a game versus Portland on the 18th of January. Rebounding, 23 rebounds from Larry Smith of the Golden State Warriors against the LA Clippers on the 12th of January. So that's a fantastic effort there from Larry Smith. He was the 24th pick overall in the 1980 draft, and through the 1985 season averaged almost 9 points a game and over 10 rebounds per contest. And for what it's worth, he's one of only 4 players from Alcorn State University to make it to the NBA.
Name the other 3.
The other 3 are... No idea.
Yeah, no idea. Man, I thought you were about to roll them out for me.
No, mate, if only. And in terms of the assist leader for this period of time, Isaiah Thomas went for 20 assists on 2 different occasions, once against the LA Lakers on the 13th of January and more recently against the Atlanta Hawks on the 22nd of January. Now, quickly, we'll go through the NBA standings through January 23rd of 1985. That date also is the date that my lovely wife, Lisa, turned 5 years old. No reason at all why I've even mentioned that. The division leaders for the Atlantic, we had Philadelphia 76ers, 34-7. They were a half game ahead of the Boston Celtics. In the Central Division, the Milwaukee Bucks were 28-14. In the Midwest, the Denver Nuggets were 25-17. In the Pacific, the Lakers were 29-14, and Chicago were 21-21. They went 4-4 in this period of time. I think they actually alternated wins and losses throughout those 8 games. And the Golden State Warriors were 10-31, replacing Cleveland at the bottom of the league standings. The Warriors were 0-7 during this period of time, including that 2 overtime heartbreaking loss at Indiana, and they were only just getting started, unfortunately, on their way to a 16-game losing streak.
I'd say that's impressive, but it's
the opposite of impressive.
More depressing than anything else, isn't it?
It is indeed, mate. That's the end of the episode, mate, unless there's anything else you'd like to add before we do wrap it up. Thanks again for being part of the show, mate.
Puts up the shot. No good. Steen grabs the defensive rebound. Belt high dribble across the timeline. Lobs to Robo for the...
Giddy up.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show and share my web address with your friends and colleagues, inallairness.com. Check out the podcast archive for plenty more episodes with high-profile guests. Follow me on Twitter at inallairness. Please add your like to the show's social hub, facebook.com/inallairness. Join me next time for another edition of the show.